You know, I feel so blessed and honored to have spent so much time over the years with Emanuel Steward. It seemed like we would meet up late at night. We were both kind of late night owls back in the day, and it seemed like we would meet up 2 or 3 in the morning before a fight, after a fight, and just spend a couple of more hours talking about what was going to take place, what took place, talking about boxing, something that Emanuel Steward knew as much about as anybody in the game. I mean, this guy is a Don Shula, a Casey Stengel, a Phil Jackson, a Scotty Bowman. He is a guy who knew the game like nobody else.
Being around Emmanuel being with you, Emmanuel knew how to bring the best of you out. Even though you tried to hide it, Emmanuel knew how to get it out and make you do it and get you to where you need to be. And I always would speak very highly of Emmanuel because Emmanuel made me help make me the person that I am today. Without Emmanuel, I don't know where I would have been or what I got as far as I've gotten today. Emmanuel is very special in my life, always will be. He's like a daddy to me. I always say, "What's up, Pops?"
Emanuel, I think his strengths were taking a fighter, and he could bring him from just a young lad all the way up through the amateur ranks to become a world champion, or he could take the world champion and make him better, because Emanuel knew about strengths and weaknesses. He really knew about a fighter's vulnerability. What he did with Lennox Lewis in making him into not just a good, but a great heavyweight champion. And I think this was even more demonstrated with what he did in his later years with Vladimir Klitschko, taking a guy who was very, very suspect because of the chin, but had a lot of tremendous athletic attributes, and he accentuated the positive, but never forgetting about the vulnerability of the fighter. Emanuel could do this because he truly knew fighters. He was a fighter himself, a very good amateur, and he is the architect of what became a franchise. Kronk really is a franchise in boxing, from his first champion, Hilmer Kinty, to Milt McCrory, Steve McCrory, Mike McCallum, Michael Moore, and then, of course, the great hitman, Tommy Hearns. Emanuel Steward worked with so many. I think he worked with over 40 world champions, all different types, from an Evander Holyfield to an Oscar De La Hoya, and of course the guys he brought up through the ranks. Emanuel didn't try to program a fighter to fight a certain way. He would look at the body of the fighter, his strengths, his weaknesses, what he did well. If he was a guy who had a good left hook and was lower to the ground, he'd have him work on the body. If he was taller, like a Tommy Hearns, he knew to have him accentuate the jab and drop the right hand. Emanuel worked on whatever a fighter did well and made him that much better. And he didn't just do this physically, he also did it mentally. I think one of Emanuel Steward's greatest strengths was he was honest. In between rounds, he would tell a fighter not necessarily what he wanted to hear, but the truth. If the guy was having a good round but he lost, he'd say, "You're doing better, kid, but you're losing the fight." If he needed a knockout, Emanuel would say, "You need a knockout." When I first got involved in this sport of boxing, we really had some great trainers that were left. Angelo Dundee, of course, and we had Gil Clancy. We had the great Eddie Futch, George Benton, who was a marvelous trainer and I think a guy underappreciated. And of course, we had Emanuel Steward. So this is a tremendous loss because unlike other sports where, coaches are recycled, managers are recycled, we don't have that in boxing. We're losing a precious few of the greats who really know the game, and boxing being the renegade sport that it is. The guys coming up, I just hope that they have paid attention to and will continue to pay attention and watch a guy like Emanuel Steward on films and on YouTube and whatever, because truly he was an artist as a trainer. One of the great transitions that Emanuel Steward made that so many can't is from the boxing ring, in his case in the corner, to behind the mic. The broadcast, well, it's not a booth in boxing, it's ringside with a microphone. He was a very good analyst, and in fact, I got to be honest with you in saying that he was the best by far of the HBO analysts. Because he knew the game and knew how to articulate it, but also for young fans, what they loved about Emanuel, you'd have never thought he was a guy, in his late 60s, because he had such great enthusiasm. I remember when he was calling the first Gotti Ward fight of the great trilogy there, and he just lost it. I mean, he said that he went crazy. This is great. This is maybe the greatest round ever. And and you could just see this tremendous pleasure that he derived from sitting there and calling. But he also knew how to to do the transition to help explain what was going on and how to do that. It was just a great mix, and boy, he's going to be very missed as a broadcaster. One of the things I know that really concerned Emanuel Steward was not only the state of boxing as it is now, fighters not facing one another, all the different things that go along, the political side and what have you, but bigger than that he was concerned about the future of boxing, because Emanuel came up as a heck of an amateur, a guy who won a Golden Glove title, and really worked with amateur fighters before building Kronk into the stable of professional fighters that it produced through the years. And this was because he knew how important the amateur program was for a young kid to get in there early and develop his skills. And just like a Little League player does it in baseball, a Pop Warner player does it in football. And he saw this diminishing to a point where now there's almost a skeleton crew of opportunities for young kids to get into boxing, and the decline and the demise of our amateur program really concerned Emanuel Steward, because he really felt that you don't just become a Muhammad Ali or a Tommy Hearns or a Ray Leonard. This is developed through the amateur experience, and I know if Emanuel could have done one thing, it would have been to really develop America into, once again, a tremendous amateur boxing program.
I think the amateur program is crucial because it's your apprenticeship. And all you have to do is just look at the track records and then look at the champions that we have, our superstars today. Oscar De La Hoya started boxing when he was 5 years old, 220-some amateur fights. Roy Jones, Lennox Lewis, 2 times in the Olympics, 1984 Olympics and 88 Olympics, gold medal winner in the super heavyweight division in 88, knocking out Riddick Bowe. We could go on and on, Floyd Mayweather, and it's a pattern. I mean, you can't avoid it. You have to have this apprenticeship. And you make your mistakes as an amateur. It's like you're a guy, you're learning, and you mess up a certain amount of material, you throw it away. And so by the time you get to be a journeyman, you say, well, Hoya, I don't make these mistakes. Before I did that, I made my mistakes when I was in my apprenticeship program. So outside of heavyweights sometimes can get by starting off late. But other than that, it's been proven that most of your champions that you get are from the amateur program.
I've had the great privilege of spending time over the years with the late, great Angelo Dundee, the late, great Eddie Futch, and now the late and always great Emanuel Steward. And he will be sorely missed in this sport on every level, as a trainer, as a commentator, and as a man. So in honor of the legend Emanuel Steward, sit back and enjoy this special presentation of In This Corner, when we sat down and chronicled the life and career of Emanuel Steward. We'll miss you, brother. welcome to In This Corner. I'm James Smith. You know, there's only really one person who shares the highs and lows and peaks and valleys of a prize fighter's career. That person would be the boxer's head trainer. I cannot think of many trainers who have been involved in more legendary and epic battles than our guest today, Emanuel Steward. Emanuel's known as being the head of the famed Kronk Gym in the Motor City of Detroit, Michigan. He's led many a world champion inside the ring and been a part of some of the biggest battles in boxing history. Emanuel has trained the likes of Thomas the Hitman Hearns, Evander Holyfield, Julio Cesar Chavez, Oscar De La Hoya, Lennox Lewis, and Vladimir Klitschko, just to name a few. He has been part of some historic battles like Hearns versus Leonard, Hearns versus Hagler, and Lewis versus Tyson. Nobody knows the fight game better than Emanuel Steward. Emanuel shares with us many of his memories of working with some of the greatest fighters of all time and explains in great detail his role as a boxing trainer. Emanuel, who is a big proponent of amateur boxing, is very concerned about the current status of the U.S. program and talks about how crucial it is for amateur boxing to return to the lofty status the American team once had, producing so many gold medals for America and future world boxing champions. It's one-on-one with one of boxing's best ever trainers, Emanuel Steward, coming up on In This Corner. You know, Emanuel Steward feels so fortunate that he found the sport of boxing. He's been a part of it now for well over 4 decades in every capacity. Emanuel believes, like I do, that trainers are kind of like fighters. They're not created. The great ones, they're born. Emanuel talks about where it all began.
I remember when I first had my first match when I was 7 years old. And I was a little bad kid that stayed in a lot of trouble in West Virginia at that time. And there was another little bad kid that lived around the mountain on another side. And so they got together and brought the 2 little kids together. And we took off our little shoes. Didn't have any mouthpieces, nothing like that. Had some little gloves and took our little shirts off. And they started betting and hollering and screaming, betting on between the 2 of us. And as a result of that, you know, I got my first experience in boxing. Yeah, here it is now. Here I am about 50 years later in big towns like Las Vegas, Nevada. It's still basically the same thing. 2 guys who everybody's going to pay just to see them, see who can whoop each other behind. I went to a local gym called Brewster, which is a gym which is where Joe Louis and Sugar Ray Robinson, you know, had all trained at once. It's a very famous gym in Detroit. And I won the little local junior Olympic championships, and I won it maybe about 3-4 years in a row. And then I won the Golden Gloves and eventually won the National Golden Gloves. But through boxing, it actually saved my life because I would have definitely been either dead or in prison today without that. And one thing led to another. And even when I was 16 years old, I had started training boxers while I was still boxing. And so I guess that was in 1961. So I've been training boxers now, I guess, about 43 years altogether.
Did you pattern your style as a trainer after anybody from the past?
I never patterned my style as a trainer after anyone. In fact, I never really had a trainer myself, to be very honest with you. I was self-taught. Boxing instincts and things come natural to me. It's a gift from God. So I never used anyone, never intended to be a trainer. It took me about almost, I guess, 30 years to realize that I was going to probably be in boxing for a long time. I always said this was going to be temporarily. Even in just about 4 years ago, I was going to have to go back to being an electrician or engineer or something, or doing some of my other businesses, back to my insurance business I used to have. I was always thinking this was just temporary and I was going to get out of it. And it finally hit me when I was inducted into the Hall of Fame that this is where you're probably going to spend the rest of your life.
Explain, if you will, the difference between the different styles of trainers. I mean, you have guys like Lou Duva and George Benton, and you have a situation there where one's really an in-the-ring type guy, or in the training camp, another guy's a motivator. Angelo Dundee had his own style. Eddie Futch, who's probably as good as anybody, had his. There are different types of trainers, right?
Like all sports, every trainer is different, and boxing even more so. Because, you know, basketball coaches, you usually just call the guys together and you tell them, lay out strategies, and you have meetings and lay out different a system that you're going to play. But boxing is different. I've been successful. I'm a physical trainer for one. I actually get in the ring. I actually work. Like when we come to a fight, I'm just as drained as the fighters are the night of the fight when we come to the ring because I actually physically work out every day with my fighters. And also I cook for my fighters because I found that it's something that's very important in that the time that you have when you eating dinner and spending time together. And I wrap my fighters' hands every day because that little one-on-one connect time that we have maybe for those 10 minutes or 12 minutes is very important. And everybody's out of our zone when we're doing that.
Why is that so important?
I think wrapping your own fighter's hand and you're talking about different things, it's a connection I have. Even training the singer Eminem, the rap singer, when I wrap his hands when we get ready to train, it's amazing the time that he starts talking to me about a lot of his personal things that's going on in his life. It's like a little fine tuning, like sincere moment that happens that I can't explain myself.
Does he rap while you rap?
While I'm rapping, no, he talks.
Okay.
But no, I do a lot of different things. And when my boxers are boxing in the ring, in training camp, I don't stay outside the ropes. I actually get in the ring while they're boxing, almost like a referee where I can talk to them much closer, moving around next to them, like whispering in his ear. I found that things are more effective because eventually they become, as you say, brainwashed to some degree, and I can actually see them do exactly what I would have been whispering in their ear to do when the real fights take place. So I stay very close to them and moving around all the time like the conscious. We used to have the regular fights, United States versus Cuba, United States versus Poland or Russia, and the kids got to be known on a regular basis. They don't have that anymore. And that was a great incentive for more kids to go into amateur boxing because you get to be on TV, you get to win your USA outfits on. So you don't see that, even during the Olympics.
How important is the amateur career to breeding the great fighters, the all-time greats? How important is the amateur program?
I think the amateur program is crucial because it's your apprenticeship. And all you have to do is just look at the track records and then look at the champions that we have, our superstars today. Oscar De La Hoya started boxing when he was 5 years old, 220-some amateur fights. Roy Jones, Lennox Lewis, 2 times in the Olympics, 1984 Olympics and 88 Olympics, gold medal winner in the super heavyweight division in 88, knocking out Riddick Bowe. We could go on Floyd Mayweather, and it's a pattern. I mean, you can't avoid it. You have to have this apprenticeship. And you make your mistakes as an amateur. It's like you're a guy, you're learning, and you mess up a certain amount of material, you throw it away. And so by the time you get to be a journeyman, you say, well, Hoya, I don't make these mistakes. Before I did that, I made my mistakes when I was in my apprenticeship program. So outside of heavyweights sometimes can get by starting off late. But other than that, it's been proven that most of your champions that you get are from the amateur program.
What is wrong with our amateur program today when we think about some of those great teams that we had and everything? What is wrong with our amateur program today? I know it's something that you're trying to help and care a lot about.
The amateur program today is suffering as a result of, I would say, mistakes and bad management that's been taking place the last 15 years. It's not an overnight situation, and you have new people up there that's trying to run the program that's inherited a lot of problems that was already there. Back in the 70s and even in the 80s, the boxers who made the Olympic team or whatever, they became household names already because they were, Mark Breland, we used to have the regular fights, United States versus Cuba, United States versus Poland or Russia, and the kids got to be known on a regular basis. They don't have that anymore. And that was a great incentive for more kids to go into amateur boxing because you get to be on TV, you get to win your USA outfits on. So you don't see that. Even during the Olympics, you very seldom see boxing if you do it 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning. It's horrible. So that has hurt a lot. And then the program itself does not have monies. There was so much money at one time, but certain individuals, a couple of them who are actually in prison today, was found to be stealing money and taking money out of the program. And that drained all of the funds that they had. So therefore, the boxers we have now are not able to go to participate in international events the way that the other countries do. And as a result, when they do come to the big matches and the events like the Pan Am Games and the Olympics, our kids are inexperienced in international boxing. And the judges and officials are just unfamiliar with them too. So as a result, we lose in that area. I think in the next 48 months, by the time the 2008 Olympics come around, a lot of those problems will be rectified. And we have some local businessmen, particularly a guy named Michael King, who's in California, who has decided he wants to start funding millions of dollars into the program to make sure that the kids can go to the proper training camps. Right now we have international matches and the boxers come out, meet at the place of the event, put on USA outfit, and they're really not a team. We don't even know what condition they're in. Some kids are coming from towns, maybe like in Idaho and Montana, where they've had no sparring, no training, and then you're going against a team, like say, like a team from Poland. I mean, those guys are really a team. They've been together, they've been in training camps, they've been training, running, and so our kids are going in just by coming in and putting on a USA outfit and calling us a team. Well, you're really not a team because they don't have the monies to finance them where they can go to Colorado Springs like in 1983 and 84. I did when I was working with the Ammeters, Pernell Whitaker, Mark Breland, Terrell Biggs, and all those guys. We were actually in training camps in Vander Holyfield, where when we went to fight against Cuba or whatever, we went as a team. The kids do not have that because of the money problem. And so Michael King has decided he's going to fund some money into the program where they can start doing this. So as a result, I think the program will be much better off by the time 2008 Olympics come around.
Back on In This Corner from the Mandalay Bay Events Center with legendary boxing trainer Emanuel Steward. Do you base how you train a fighter on the style of the fighter or the personality of the fighter?
I train my fighters based on a combination of the mental makeup, first of all, because every fighter that I work with, and I have to go into all of the different camps from time to time, I have to get inside of that particular person's makeup. And then I have to work and be effective inside of his mental makeup. Lennox was a totally different person from like Thomas Hearns, from Chavez, Aaron Pryor, all of those guys are different makeups. And then I look at what they do natural for as their natural skills. There's some people like Thomas Hearns never could comfortably throw a left hook to the head, weird as it was in all those fights. He didn't want to throw a left, he just, his way his body was connected, maybe muscles or whatever, never comfortable throwing that punch. So I based his style off of a jab, and moving guys into a right hand that they would never see. So I never had to spend time working on this left hook. And we had some guys that was just gifted like a Chavez who could do virtually anything, but he didn't have good footwork, so he had to spend more time on showing him how to cut off the ring on guys.
I'm going to go into a little bit of fighter association with you. You've worked with so many fighters. I'm going to say a name and you just tell me what comes to your mind with different fighters that you've worked with. And we'll start out with Tommy Hearns.
Determination. I would say he was the epitome of determination, and to win and also to give his best performance. And very, very easy to train.
Julio Cesar Chavez.
A very unusual man in the fact that he never actually had what he said a real trainer until I trained him, which was like his 96th fight. And he had his own routines, things that he laid down and his methods that he followed religiously. Example was he would like to train at high altitude and then he would take off for maybe 10 days and go to an even higher altitude. But he would do all of those things in the system, and after a certain amount of time, his training consisted of like 7 rounds, 4 minutes each, with 30 seconds rest. And when he did that, he knew he was in good shape. After training in solitude for like 5 or 6 weeks, you say, Stewart, we must now go where I get used to being around a lot of people. And then from there, he would go to Los Angeles, and then he would have about 6 days that he would go to a different neighborhood every day to train. And he would have it all in the papers exactly where he's going to be at. So it would be mobs of people that are waiting. And Oscar De La Hoya was one of the kids that he sparred with when he was a 16-year-old at the same time. And by the time that he got to Las Vegas for the big fight, he would have built up such a following, so much excitement, that it would just be a humongous amount of people that he would bring in. He also was very good with the public. I would say for his being accessible and warm with the fans, I would rate Julio Cesar Chavez right up there with Muhammad Ali.
Oscar De La Hoya.
Tremendous hand speed and natural gift to punching power. He was a very unusual fighter in terms of he could punch, and his punches sometimes, particularly his left hook, would not even look like there's much power in it, but still he could hurt you. And he was always concerned about doing big things. Yeah, he's a gambler. He's one of those guys that, you know, he'll roll the dice, all or nothing. One of the biggest gamblers that I've ever saw when it comes down to saying that he'll take big fights, dangerous fights, as long as they're big events. He likes the excitement, the thrill of super fights.
Vander Holyfield.
Vander Holyfield, extremely egotistical, even though a lot of people do not realize it. Loves having the limelight and all the attention strictly on him, and a tremendously competitive fighter. Though he would give 100% and totally no fear of anyone or anything.
Lennox Lewis.
Talented, laid back, conservative, analytical about everything. Careful about what he says, when he says it, how he says it. And went on to be one of the greatest fighters we've had around, but could have been even greater if he could have had a little bit more of a aggressiveness, I say, and a little less conservative attitude.
I always say that fighters are the most common and uncommon of all athletes.
Boxers are unique. They're very unique. There's no team. And the smallest thing can become a major thing when you are the full team. There's no substitution. I just say you just have a bad cold. And you're going into a game, you have a bad cold. Any other sport, you say, okay, Smitty, you just sat down tonight. Robert, you'll play. Maybe let you play the last quarter or whatever. So the team still goes on. But you are the team, and if you have injuries of any type, problems mentally, you still have to go. You have to perform.
The only reprieve a fighter gets is that minute in between rounds when they come over to an Emanuel Steward.
Well, the minute or sometimes less that you get between rounds is so crucial in a boxing event more than any other sport, because first of all, you can't call time out the way in other sports. You can take as much time as you can take time. That is a regulated preset time interval, and that is all that you're going to get. And if you're not ready to be prepared to have your guy go back, whether it's an injury or whatever, when that bell rings, I mean, championship of the world is gone because you had maybe a big cut, for a good example. And then the instructions. The guy's been out in the battlefield, things are rough and crazy. I mean, he wants to come back, and you got just a certain amount of time. You got to be able to tell him exactly what to do to save him, because he's coming back looking for some kind of advice. It can be crucial. And you have some guys like Eddie Futch, who made a great decision once with Joe Frazier at the end of the 14th round with only one round left to go, and with Joe Frazier hit on the scorecards. And he told Joe Frazier, I'm stopping the fight.
It's Muhammad Ali.
Because, right, because the thrill in the middle with Muhammad Ali. And still, that 3 minutes that he would have maybe competed could have changed him and damaged him permanently for life.
Emanuel, how do you want to be remembered in this sport?
I just want to be remembered in this sport as a guy who gave my best and never screwed anybody. Treated people exactly like I would like to have been treated. If I was a boxer, I try to, as a manager and trainer, I try to actually manage and train my boxers exactly the way, if I was the boxer, where I would want someone to really care about me and treat me. And I just try to go through life using that philosophy. And that's basically it. The rest of the things, being great and not being great, statistics would have to, show that. You can holler and brag because you got different times, different eras. But just to say that I was a guy that treated people good.
One of the things I've enjoyed most about boxing is not only the fights and the fighters, but my relationship and friendship with you. And we appreciate what you've done for the sport, for so many fighters, and for joining us today on In This Corner. Thank you very much.
It's my pleasure, Smitty.
You know, folks, I feel prize fighting is truly the toughest job in all of sports. It can also be one of the loneliest. When a fighter is being bruised, battered, and he feels beaten, and he returns to his corner for that 1 minute, 60 seconds isn't a lot of time to get it all back together. Sometimes it's the guy in his ear, the cornerman, who helps to instruct, encourage, and motivate him to perhaps steal victory from defeat. Some guys have really been able to do it. Guys like Whitey Bimstein, Ray Arcel, Eddie Futch, Angelo Dundee, and yes, our guest today. In This Corner wants to thank Emanuel Steward for joining us.
If they think they're ahead on the scorecards, they decide to just take off, to just run or try to do whatever they can to just survive. In other words, you get paid to participate for 12 rounds. You should be able to fight for 12 rounds. It used to be 15. And that's why a lot of these boxers today are having these controversial losses, because they're not putting their best effort, especially for the full 12 rounds, which is what you get paid to do.